Alright Reds, this is Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index, and this is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. What's something you'd always wanted to learn? Remember back when you were a kid, always curious, always discovering something new. Now think about this. As an adult, do you still spark that joy of learning new things? Whether it's gardening, picking up a new language, or maybe mastering bowling to outshine your best friend, it's essential to keep that spirit alive. And guess what? Therapy can be a fantastic way to reconnect with your inner student, your sense of wonder. Because truly, the back-to-school vibe isn't just for kids or young adults, it's for everyone at any stage of life. Now, I haven't used BetterHelp myself, but I've seen firsthand how therapy can dramatically shift perspectives. It's not just about heavy issues, it's about enhancing your everyday life, learning to cope better with daily stress, setting healthy boundaries, and empowering yourself to be the best version of yourself. It's a space where anyone can benefit from a little extra insight and support. So why BetterHelp? Well, it's therapy that fully adapts to your timetable, and it's all online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, and they'll match you with a therapist. And if you feel the need to change therapists, you can switch anytime without an extra charge. How's that for flexibility? With over 5,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp offers a wide variety of specialists, ready to help you rediscover your curiosity and tackle new challenges. Visit betterhelp.com/index today. There's a bonus. Get 10% off your first month. Remember, that's betterhelp.com/index. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp and keep on learning, no matter where you are on life's journey.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
Slightly less than 7 out of 10, but we're getting there.
Well, you were struggling with a sore throat last week after your shenanigans at the first wedding, and now there's been shenanigans at a second wedding. So it's no surprise that you are not in tip-top condition after weddings and back-to-back weekends.
Yes, I think this is just affirmation and proof that nobody should ever leave their house ever again and just stay in and watch football until the end of time.
I can get on board with a society that preaches that type of mindset. I really can. Right, we are going to just go around the houses today and have a look at a few different things, but we need to start with the news that's come out today that Harvey Elliott is facing between 4 and 6 weeks on the sidelines with a fractured foot. He obviously left the England under-21 camp and returned to the AXA training centre, and having been fully assessed, it is now the case where we will be without Harvey for the next month or so. Now, he wasn't playing a huge role so far this season, but with games about to start coming thick and fast, you would have assumed we'd see more of him.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously saw quite a bit of him in pre-season and playing pretty different, pretty specific roles, and he looked like he was well suited to it. And now when the cups start coming, domestic and European, you would expect a little bit more rotation, a little bit more involvement for those both off the bench in matches for more minutes and obviously starting here and there as well. That's generally where the team starts to be changed around. I think it was reasonable that we didn't make too many changes. You know, we were trying to sort of build a new look side and get players settled into the team straight away and get as many minutes as we could in the first couple of games ahead of what was a much bigger game third time around. And then the international break is a good reassessment point. So a disappointment for Elliott and obviously for we've mentioned before, we've not got the deepest midfield zone at the moment. You're going to probably have to repurpose people one or two ways, but it's, as usual, it's an opportunity for others. Hopefully it doesn't just mean that Szoboszlai just continues to play every minute of every game, because that's where we ran into trouble last year.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, Dominic is going to need rests, especially with the amount of off-ball work he's having to put in. But I think we are quite fortunate in that a lot of the players in the squad are sort of multi-purpose players. So if we look at the attack, Mo can play right or through the middle. Darwin can play through the middle or off the left. Jota can play the whole way across. I think Diaz could play the whole way across. I actually think Diaz could also play as an 8 if you really need them to. And I think Cody can play left 9 or maybe as an 8 if you need him to. We also have midfielders that are very versatile. I think Alexis could easily step forward into that number 10 position. Gravenberch could play there without question. And Curtis Jones could play there. So I'm not really sure how much we were going to see of Harvey anyway, because it's not like a thing where we'd be changing the entire team game after game. It would be a lot of rotation. And with Federico Chiesa as our latest signing, he's another player with immense versatility, and he could play all three front positions, and he could play as an 8. He's done it in the past, played in midfield when he was at Fiorentina. So I'm not sure there was going to be as many minutes for Harvey as people had assumed. He definitely would have played, and he probably would have started 1, maybe 2 games over the next 4 to 6 weeks. But I don't think it's as big a blow as it might have been under Jurgen, who was a little bit more rigid with things. I think Arne will be more comfortable altering the shape a little bit, but also altering players' positions, as we've seen him already do since taking over.
Yeah, I think there's a possibility here where we can dovetail in a little bit of a similar way to where we saw, for example, McAllister last year was deeper and then later moved forward, or turn the clock back a little bit longer. Henderson was the one to drop deeper and then went back again forward into, there's definitely been times when, especially in that midfield, different people have occupied different roles just by form and fitness. But it's 7 games I think we have before the next international break. So I agree, you would expect him to have started, let's say 2 of them, probably the League Cup game and 1 other somewhere along the way. The bigger issue is obviously going to be if injuries arise elsewhere. That's where we'll start to feel it. It's not necessarily Elliott himself being out right at this moment in time. It's if Elliott is one of, say, 3 attacking options who are out. That's when we might start to feel the pinch.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, you look at the fixtures, I think you're right. I think Harvey would have started that West Ham game. I think that's an obvious one for him. I think there's potential for maybe a league start against perhaps Crystal Palace.
Or Bournemouth at home.
Bournemouth home. I mean, even the Forest game at home might have been one.
Yeah, if you have anyone come back with the knockoff internationals or they played all the minutes there, then one change or 2 across the front 6 is not an outrageous thing.
No, exactly. So, he definitely would have gotten some minutes, but as I say, he it's not like he'd been key thus far. What do you make? Is it 1 appearance he's had so far this season?
Yeah, I think about 8 minutes so far.
About 8 minutes against Brentford. So it may well be. Look, Jurgen was very high on Harvey Elliott. Jurgen was the one that called him the diamond and was very forceful in pushing him into a first-team situation where, truthfully, Harvey wasn't always ready for it. And you look at last season, his starts early in the year were largely quite poor, but he was very impactful off the bench. Jurgen clearly wanted to get Harvey on the pitch as often as possible. We saw that with the sheer volume of appearances that he made, and then the fact that he said afterwards, I should have played him more, which was just a bit odd. But it may well be that Arne Slot looks at him and thinks, you're just not the level I'm looking for at this point. You might get there, but for now, I don't view you as someone I want to have in my team as regularly. In the same way that if Jurgen was still in charge, Stefan Bajcetic would be at the club and he would be getting minutes. Whereas Arne took a look at him and thought, you're not ready, so I'm going to send you out on loan. Like, he's clearly got a very different view of most, if not all, of the players than the previous manager, which is natural. You know, Jurgen had favourites always, and I think with Harvey, who joined at 16 and was, you know, is a Liverpool fan and clearly very committed to the cause, I think that's the type of thing that really sold with Jurgen. Whereas Arne doesn't have that kind of pre-existing connection to him. Arne didn't bring him to the club. He didn't see him grow from a 16-year-old kid walking in with a silly haircut to a 21-year-old with an equally silly haircut who's become a much better player, obviously. But he doesn't have the investment in Harvey. So it may well be he wasn't a big part of the plans anyway. So this might not be a bad thing for the first team. But like you say, it's if we get an accumulation of injuries, if, let's just say, Jota gets hurt, because we've seen that happen, Szoboszlai got hurt, and let's say there was one other with a knock, then that would leave us short. That's where we would get short. But at the same time, I also think Arne's looking at someone like Trainiani and thinking, if I need to put you in, I'm just putting you in. Because you, I believe it. You, I think, are ready. You, I think, are good enough for what I want right now. Like, it may well be that he views Trainiani in the same way that Jurgen viewed Stefan Bajcetic and Harvey as the players to fast track. Arne might have that kind of view of Trey. So it might be that we see Trey get minutes in the next 6-7 games.
Yeah, look, part of a new manager coming in is that it is a new start for all of them, and that doesn't just mean the ones who have been out of favour, which is usually what we refer to. It is the players who have been the favourites or the go-tos or whatever. They have to prove themselves again, or they have to find a slightly different role for themselves again. You know, we've barely seen Endo, obviously, and it looks like he's out of the picture, but there's no question that he could come in for specific games, play a specific role, and, for example, free up Gravenberch to play further forward like he did against United. And that's perfectly fine. And the whole point of it, obviously, is that we have different solutions for different things. And yes, one or two of the younger players could as well. Tyler Morton, we've already mentioned.
Yeah. This is the thing. Like, this is where we, even though we all think we're one short in midfield, it's that we're one starter short. Not that we're one body short so much. We have bodies there, and like you say, Endo could come in, play as the 6, Alexis pushes to the 8, or pushes back to the 8, and Gravenberch goes to the 10. Or Gravenberch plays as the 8, and Alexis goes to the 10. And that would give Dominic rest. Tyler Morton can also come in. He could play as the 6. He could play as the 8. So they do give us flexibility with them, and I think Endo in particular, because I think Morton's fairly malleable, and I think he's got more to his game than Endo has on the ball, which is obviously something that's very important with Arne Slot. With Endo, it's just about picking the right games for him. You don't want to put him in a situation where we're going to have 80% of the ball and you're going to be asking him to be the first line of progression from midfield. He's the one you put in maybe where you're going to be up against it a little bit more, where it's going to be a bit more of a physical battle, where you're looking for leadership and veteran experience. You're looking for someone that can put their foot in, win the ball back, provide some solidity and some protection for the defence. That's maybe where you pick him. And with Morton, if you're going to dominate the ball, you put Tyler Morton at the base of your midfield. He's more than happy to play from the back. He's more than happy to break lines with his passing. He's very comfortable in possession. I don't know that you'd put him in against the best teams around, but against Forest, Bournemouth, Wolves, Bologna, Crystal Palace, certainly wouldn't have any concern putting him in against any or all of those personally.
I think for Endo as well, it might be the case where either in Europe early on you want to maybe be a little bit more locked down away from home, or perhaps a couple of those games where you are playing a bit more combative midfielders, you could even see him as maybe not outright as an 8, but much more of a structured double pivot in possession, where you just want an extra ball winner basically in there and just allow maybe one of the midfielders to do their thing higher upfield.
Yeah, and you just, you say to them, when you get the ball, keep it simple. Give it to Trent, give it to Alexis. If there's a pass on to Dom or to whoever's playing as the 10, it could be Gravenberch, give it to him. But don't overexert yourself. Don't stretch your limits. Just keep things nice and simple. Keep us ticking over. And make sure, primarily, that you are positionally sound. So, best of luck to Harvey with the rehabilitation, obviously, and the recovery. Hopefully he is back soon. Hopefully it's closer to the 4 weeks than the 6 weeks. Though, what I would say is, if it's 6 weeks, at least that takes him beyond the next international break as well, which would be good to not have him go away with England in October with the 21s. Right, we wanted to play a little game. So, last season saw Luton, Burnley and Sheffield United relegated from the Premier League. And this season, Leicester City, Southampton and Ipswich Town have taken over from them. So what we thought we'd do is we'd each take one group and make a combined 11 out of them. But before we get to that, Karl, let's just discuss the merits of these teams as a three-team group versus a three-team group. I'm inclined to say that the teams that have gotten promoted are better than the teams who were relegated, who were obviously the promoted teams the year before. I think the teams that have come this summer have, by and large, done a better job of preparing themselves for the Premier League. Now, part of that, obviously, is that Leicester and Southampton had only gone down and come straight back up. So they had Premier League-ready players. But I think Ipswich have done a really good job as well. Whereas last summer, Burnley spent far too much money on young players that weren't ready. Luton took the approach of, we're going to build a really good championship team, and if we go down, we'll be in a good position to come back up. Though, if you look at the championship table right now, that clearly is not working out for them. And Sheffield United sold their two best players and then bought a couple of good players, but ultimately just didn't improve the areas of their team that were weak. And we saw, for example, Wes Foderingham, whose biggest contribution to football prior to last season's appearances in the Premier League was inspiring one of the great moments as Paolo Di Canio went on Sky Sports after a Swindon Town game and had maybe the biggest temper tantrum I've ever seen a manager have, and started shouting about him being League One Wes, not Cech, not De Gea, League One Wes. When Wes Foderingham is your starting goalkeeper and you're relying on Ollie McBurney up front, that's not ideal. I don't see any of this year's newly promoted teams having those type of glaring weaknesses.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. Ha. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Excuse me. No, I don't think that it's quite the same. I don't think that any of them are, let's say, as Premier League ready as we might have seen in previous years, though, either. Like if you go back a few years, I'm talking about when teams came up and they maybe only needed a couple of additions to get themselves ready if they'd already been in the Premier League a year or 2 years previously. I don't think that any of them are or were that close other than Leicester because of the sheer number of Premier League experienced players that they already had. I a little bit wonder whether Southampton and Ipswich, both of them have a bit done similar to last year with buying people who are basically going to be the best in the Championship ready if they go down again. Quite a lot of inexperience that Ipswich in particular signed, top flight inexperience I'm talking about. But they have definitely both spent. They've definitely both tried to add where they obviously saw their weaknesses or where they needed greater depth. For the most part, I think that that's also been done with not outright youth in every case for Southampton, but certainly players who can be at the club for sort of 2-3 years minimum and sort of grow a little bit with them as well. Ipswich maybe a bit more in that sort of 21, 20, 22 sort of age camp where they are going to have to develop them quite a bit. 23, I think Jacob Greaves is he? So still quite a bit there to grow in terms of Premier League quality at least, but they've definitely had a go and they haven't held back on the spending after obviously their most important part was keeping hold of the manager.
Yeah, well, that was huge for them, that they were able to keep hold of Kieran McKenna, in contrast to Leicester City, who got promoted and then lost their manager. So, I'm obviously taking the relegated teams. I'll take Luton, Burnley, and Sheffield United and make my team out of them. You take Leicester, Ipswich, and Southampton and make your team from them. But a question for you: last season, Rob Edwards and Vincent Kompany survived the whole season. Only Sheffield United changed manager. Now, Leicester have already changed manager and brought in Steve Cooper. But forgetting that, what's the over-under on managerial changes by the newly promoted teams? Is it like 0.5? So you would say 1 is likely or unlikely? Or do you think there's the possibility of more? Because the way Southampton have started, I do have some concerns about Russell Mark.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I don't think, should we say, either of the blue teams are going to be ditching their manager regardless of what happens. I think they're there for the entire season. So, yeah, I think you'd have to put it at a half. It's about whether Russell Martin can basically show that he can add more and can be Premier League calibre himself, I suppose, as a boss. I think, Kieran McKenna obviously is a bit of a one-off situation in that he's already highly sought after. They've given him a new contract. He's agreed to stay. I'm sure that there were plenty of conversations there before he signed to say, look, it might not be smooth sailing this year, but we believe in what we're doing over the next 2-3 years or whatever. So I don't think there's any doubt about him. Steve Cooper, I just think, is perfectly fine. Like, even they know that if they go down with him, he's capable of getting them back up and capable of keeping them in the Premier League, given a bit of more time, more opportunity. So I don't think there's any worries about him. I think he's a good get for Leicester. So there's no real problem there at all. I'm not sure. I believe that they're going to go down looking at the early weeks of the table. Obviously, there's a long way to go in terms of fixtures and consistency and all the rest of it. But I just think he's good enough at team building that he will keep them up, given what he's done right at the start, how they look so far, and obviously the other teams who are around them, which is the other factor there. So it is, I think, just about Russell Martin and Southampton and how they expected the season to go, which we won't know, and how the season is going, which is kind of as expected so far.
Yeah, to be fair. I actually think there's more chance that the three teams who were relegated sack more managers this year. I think Chris Wilder is very possible. And I think Rob Edwards could be really possible as well if he doesn't turn things around quickly, which I think would be very unfair given they didn't give him the chance to really succeed in the Premier League. And I thought he rinsed pretty much everything he could out of that squad last year, because it was almost to a man. It was a playoff championship squad. Like, it's not even the type of squad that you'd look at the start of a championship year and think, well, they're going to run away with this. It was just a playoff championship squad. And now they've gone down and started dreadfully, and they've lost a couple of vital players from last year in Ogbonna, who's obviously gone to Ipswich, and Ross Barkley, who went to Villa, and they haven't really replaced them all that well. But they haven't done a whole lot of anything this summer. Couple of okay signings, but I wouldn't be enthused by what they've done. I thought it was... I know they've got, plans for a stadium and all that, and they had to spend some money on Kenilworth Road last year. But I thought they cheaped out this summer. I was really hoping that they'd show some force in the Championship and really make an effort to, put themselves as one of the top teams, and they just didn't do it. Right, so let's get started on this. How do you want to do it? Do you want to pick a manager from your three, and I'll pick a manager from my three, and then we'll pick, formations and goalkeepers and so on and so forth? Or do you just want to go... Well, what way do you want to go with this? This was your idea.
Yeah, we can go position by position when we go through the teams. Happy to pick a manager now as well. I think obviously Kieran McKenna's got the big reputation at the minute, but I'm just going to go on what we've seen these managers accomplish at the higher end of football, and it's too early to be picking him, so I'm going to go with Steve Cooper. That's a fairly routine one for me. You could go with McKenna if you want to gamble, and you think from what you've seen from him in lower leagues is just that exceptional, but I think Cooper's got the bigger body of work behind him. I'm happy enough to go with him. I think he'd keep me up regardless of my team.
Yeah, I would land the same way as you. I think McKenna is definitely a special manager. I think what he's done with Ipswich is absolutely incredible. The fact that they've never lost to a team in the bottom half of either division they've been in. They've never lost back-to-back game. Well, forgetting what's happened so far in the Premier League. They've never lost back-to-back games. The first time they lost back-to-back games was when they played Liverpool and Manchester City. And he'd been there 2.5 years at that point. Like, that's a fairly impressive thing to do in the Championship. The fact that they lost the least games in both League One and then the Championship. They scored the most goals in League One and then the Championship in back-to-back years. I find that very impressive. But I agree, for what they need now, for what you need now, a team basically just to stay up, like that's the whole mantra for a team that's been promoted, is just survive. Steve Cooper is the one you go with. Steve Cooper is the one with a proven track record of grinding out results, of being able to go to bigger clubs and get a result. So I would have gone with Cooper as well. I'm going to go with Rob Edwards, because I'm definitely not picking Chris Wilder, and Vincent Kompany just seems like a terrible set of lads, and I know he's now Bayern Munich manager. I think it's one of the funniest appointments I've ever seen, that Bayern Munich picked the fella who was just relegated with Burnley. But I'm going to go with Edwards, because I thought his promotion was more impressive than Kompany's, given when he took over, what he took over. Like, it's Luton. Burnley had been in the Premier League multiple times in recent years. Luton hadn't been in the top flight since before the Premier League. They'd been in non-league more recently than the Premier League. I thought Edwards did an amazing job getting them up. I thought he got much more out of his team last year than Kompany got out of his. So I'm going to go with Rob Edwards.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think that there's even an argument to say anybody in the Premier League got more out of their squad than Rob Edwards did, if you're talking in relative terms last season. Like, there was very, very few Premier League ready, Premier League caliber, Premier League proven, whatever you want to term it, players in their squad last year. And they gave loads of teams a run for the money. They came pretty close to what was it, maybe April, let's say, before they did finally kind of get cut adrift a bit, really, and it was sort of over and done with before the actual run-in, but they had no real right to even be in and around that. They were very, very good compared to what was expected of them, what some feared might be the case from them. I think that's a decent shout, yeah, and I do definitely hope he gets a bit of time. I've not been following the fortunes of Luton or their summer transfers or anything. I've certainly no intention of going back there again to that stadium. But
why?
Yeah, but I do hope that he, as a head coach, gets sort of time to turn that around, because it's been very hit and miss for him in his career so far, and he definitely looked like he could at least get Queens for his team building from last year. So hopefully that's an improvement.
Yeah, I mean, look, he did a really, really good job with Forest Green, and then obviously the Watford thing was just such a disaster. I just find it hilarious that Watford did really well, I thought, to identify him as the manager to take them forward. Sacked him after a couple of months, and then he went to their biggest rival, who's just up the road, and then got them promoted out of the same division when they were lower in the division than Watford at the time. Yeah, it's funny. Right. So Steve Cooper plays a multitude of shapes. He plays a 4-2-3-1, a 4-4-2, a 3-4-3, a 3-5-2. What shape are you going with, Mr. Matchett?
So I'm actually going to decide the last couple of positions as we go through. So I'm kind of able to change. Have you got a fixed formation in mind?
Well, it's Rob Edwards, so it's 3-4-3.
Let's stick with the same one so we can go through in those lines then.
Okay, cool. Right. Well, goalkeeper. My choices aren't great, to be clear. So Sheffield United's options: Adam Davies, Ivo Gerbic, whose own fans were calling him Ivo Garbage, Wes Fotheringham, and Jordan Amissa were the Sheffield United contenders. Luton offered us James Shea, Tim Krul, and Thomas Kaminski, who's not bad. But I think it's James Trafford. If we're just picking the best team to move forward with, I think James Trafford has to be the goalkeeper. Certainly better than Muric. I'm not really sure. I think that's the big misstep Ipswich made this summer. I like all the business except Muric. So I'm going to pick James Trafford as my goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonably straightforward one. Like, he's probably got the biggest upside of all of them, and probably had the best season of all of them as well. I do think Kaminski was pretty good for it.
No, he was, to be fair.
So I'm going to go based on sort of weighted towards what they've done this season so far, but with obvious acceptance of what they've done Premier League previously, because that's what we're looking at, best Premier League teams that we can come up with it. So with that in mind, I am going to go for Mads Hermansen in goal, just ahead of, should we say, Aaron Ramsdale is basically his second option, because I mean, Gavin Bazunu hasn't played yet this season, so I don't think it's sort of fair to include him in this considerations. Southampton have obviously changed goalkeeper after only a couple of games because they brought Ramsdale in. Ipswich, one of those to already have played more than one goalkeeper this season. And as you have just discussed him as well, I don't think we need to go too far deeper on Muric. He's got a lot to prove. He's 25 years old. I think there are better 25-year-old goalkeepers out there they could have got for similar sort of money, similar profile, but better history, let's say, of what they've done. I think Hermansen's been all right. He's obviously faced quite a lot of quite a workout so far. Villa, Fulham, and Spurs is pretty tricky as far as open three fixtures go. They've not been like embarrassed in terms of what they've allowed and what they've conceded and all the rest of it. But probably he's done okay. He's done quite well at times. He's made a couple of big saves to keep them in. Against Villa, I think it was in particular. So I'll go with him. He's not been too bad at all. And 24 years of age, yeah, decent profile. I think it's not bad. I think I'm quite looking forward to seeing him as the season goes on, because I didn't see too much of him last year, obviously, and I think he looks all right. Yeah,
I think he's solid. And he's still young for a goalkeeper at 24. So yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair pick. Basunu, like you said, he hasn't played. He's not going to play until probably February or March. with a torn Achilles. Nobody wants to be committing to Aaron Ramsdale. I think that's one of the weirdest transfers of the summer. I really do. Like, a guy who has been in relegation battles twice and been relegated twice, who's never shown himself to be a consistent goalkeeper. You had a really good young goalkeeper. I know he's injured, but why are you spending 18 million on another goalkeeper when you could have gone and got someone on loan? Or you could have bought Sam Johnston for 10 million, who personally I would rather have than Ramsdale, because while Ramsdale has a higher ceiling, he has a much lower floor.
Yeah.
And Sam Johnston's kind of like 6 to 7 out of 10 every single week, whereas Ramsdale's 8 or 9 one week and then 2 or 3 the next. I'd rather have the consistency. I'd rather have someone that's proven to me they can play in a team in the bottom half of the league and be consistent and keep that team in the division. I think that or you could have just gone and loaned in Karl Rushworth or somebody, a really talented young goalkeeper, for the season and not committed money to a new goalkeeper. But they did what they did. But I agree with you. Mads Hermansen is the one I'd go with as well.
Do you remember sort of end of the 90s, start of the 2000s, there were like 5 clubs in a row just kept buying Herman Hreidarsson for quite a lot of money, and he just kept getting relegated with them?
Yes.
That's in danger of becoming this era's Herman Hreidarsson.
Herman Hreidarsson, and I think it was Neil Redfern. I want to say Neil Redfern got relegated 3 seasons in a row out of the Premier League as well. He came up with Barnsley, they got relegated. He went somewhere else, they got relegated, and he went somewhere else, and they got relegated too. But Herman Hreidarsson was the one. If your team signed Herman Hreidarsson at any point in the summer, you knew you were getting relegated the following year, without question.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.